My mother's hands were perfectly still the entire time she was lying to my face. I noticed that before anything else, before the documents spread across the kitchen table, before my uncle's lawyer cleared his throat for the third time, before my brother leaned back in his chair with that small, satisfied smile he always wore when he thought he'd already won. Her hands were flat on the table, completely still, and I remember thinking, she's practiced this. I want to back up. My name is not important. What matters is this. I am 31 years old. I work as a licensed forensic document examiner for a federal agency, and for the past 9 years I have built my career around one simple truth. Paper doesn't lie. People do. But the paper they leave behind always tells the truth eventually. My grandmother, I called her Nana June, died in October. She was 83 years old, sharp as a tack until the very end. The kind of woman who balanced her own checkbook by hand and knew exactly what every single thing she owned was worth. She'd grown up with nothing, built something real over 70 years, and she was deliberate about every decision she ever made, including what happened to her house after she was gone. Nana June's house was in Asheville, North Carolina, a craftsman-style home on 2 acres built in 1941, paid off in full since 1987, appraised in the spring before she died at just under $740,000. She also had a small investment account, around $190,000, that she'd built from decades of dividend reinvestment and sheer stubbornness about spending money she didn't need to spend. Combined, the estate was worth somewhere around $930,000, depending on the market. She had 3 grandchildren. Me, my brother. I'll call him by the name he's always preferred people use for him, which is just my brother, because he never liked me anyway. And our cousin Wren, who is my aunt's daughter and who has never done a single harmful thing to anyone in her entire life and absolutely did not deserve what happened next. In Nana June's actual will, the one she signed in 2019, witnessed by 2 neighbors and notarized at the UPS store on Marymount Avenue, she split everything 3 ways. The house would be sold and the proceeds divided equally between the 3 of us. The investment account the same. She was clear. She was specific. She talked to me about it personally, sitting at her kitchen table with a cup of Folgers and a yellow legal pad, walking me through exactly what she intended. I don't want any fighting, she told me. I want it clean. I told her I understood. I told her it would be clean. I didn't know then that someone else had a different version of the document. My mother called me 3 weeks after the funeral. I was at work, in the middle of reviewing a contested signature on a commercial lease dispute, and I almost let it go to voicemail. I'm glad I didn't, though, not for any reason I would have wanted at the time. She sounded warm. That's the thing I keep coming back to. She sounded genuinely warm, the way she used to sound when I was a kid, and she wanted something from me that she knew I wouldn't want to give. She said there was a will reading, a formal one, with a lawyer. She said my grandmother's estate attorney had reached out and they needed all the beneficiaries present. She gave me a date, the 2nd Saturday in November. She gave me an address, the lawyer's office in downtown Asheville. Your cousin is coming up from Charlotte, she said. It'll be nice to all be together again. I said I'd be there. Here's what she didn't tell me. The estate attorney she mentioned, I'll call him the attorney, because his name doesn't matter, was not my grandmother's attorney. He was someone my brother had found, a real estate attorney from Weaverville who had never met Nana June in his life, whose office smelled like fresh paint and had almost no files visible anywhere, which I clocked the moment I walked in the door. I also didn't know, yet, about the second will. I drove up from Raleigh on Friday night and stayed at a Holiday Inn off I-26. I was not staying at the house. I hadn't been welcome at the house, my mother's house, 30 minutes from Nana June's, for about 4 years, ever since I'd refused to co-sign a home equity loan my brother wanted to take against a property that was not his to borrow against. That refusal cost me my relationship with most of my immediate family. My mother stopped calling for about 8 months. My brother sent me a long email full of sentences I won't repeat here. I was used to being the difficult one. I had been the difficult one my entire life, which is to say, I was the one who asked questions, the one who read things before signing them, the one who said, "I need to think about this," instead of just nodding along. My brother was the golden one, charming, funny, the one who always knew how to make my mother laugh. He had also, over the course of his adult life, borrowed money from approximately every person in our extended family and paid back almost none of it. But he was charming about it. He was always charming about it. I arrived at the attorney's office at 9:50 for a 10 o'clock meeting. Ren was already there, sitting in a chair near the window, looking uncomfortable. She looked up when I came in, and I could tell immediately that she also felt like something was slightly off. We didn't say anything about it. We hugged, talked about the drive, commented on the weather, the way people do when they don't want to say the real thing out loud in a room full of strangers. My mother arrived at 10 past. My brother was with her. He was wearing a blazer, which I mention only because my brother almost never wears a blazer. He greeted me the way you greet someone you haven't seen in a while, but have no particular feelings about. Cordial, brief, the handshake instead of the hug. My mother kissed my cheek. Her hands were already still. The attorney came in, arranged some folders, offered coffee that no one took, and began. The document he placed in front of us was dated August of that year. 2 months before my grandmother died, and 3 months after Nana June had told me in her own kitchen exactly how she intended to leave things. In this version, the house went entirely to my brother. The investment account was split equally, but only between my mother and my brother. Ren and I received a nominal amount, $5,000 each, described in the document as acknowledgement of love and relationship. The language was careful. It was specific in the places it needed to be. Specific and deliberately vague in the places that mattered most. Ren made a small sound beside me. Not a word, just a sound. A short exhale, like someone had lightly pushed her. My brother did not look at us. My mother's hands were flat on the table. I looked at the signature on the document. I looked at it for a long time. Nana June had a distinctive signature. She learned to write in the Palmer method, that old formal cursive style taught in American schools through the mid-20th century. There were specific features to how she formed certain letters, the way the capital J in June curved back on itself, the way the N in her last name connected to the next letter. I had examined her signature many times over the years, on birthday cards and Christmas checks and the various documents that had passed through my hands professionally and personally. The signature on the document in front of me was close. It was a very good attempt. The capital letters were almost right. The overall proportions were almost right. But almost is not what a court needs. Almost is not what a forensic examiner sees. I set the document down and folded my hands in front of me, and I did not say a single word. Let me tell you what I had done in the weeks before that meeting, because it matters. After my grandmother died, I'd helped sort through her papers. I was the only one of her grandchildren who lived within driving distance at the time, and so I'd spent 3 long weekends in Asheville going through filing cabinets and shoeboxes and the accordion folder she kept in the bottom drawer of her bedroom dresser. My mother was present for parts of this. My brother was not. During that process, I found the original will. I found the 2019 document, signed and notarized. I also found correspondence from her actual attorney, a woman named Patterson who had practiced estate law in Asheville for 22 years, and a copy of the notarization receipt. I photographed all of it, every page. I emailed the photographs to myself and then to a separate account I keep for professional purposes, and then I drove the original documents to Attorney Patterson's office, explained who I was and what I was worried about, and asked her to confirm what was on file. She confirmed it. She also, after a conversation I will not detail here, agreed to hold a certified copy in her office safe. I also, before I left Asheville that 3rd weekend, did something I had never expected to do in the context of my own family. I filed a preliminary fraud notification with the Clerk of Superior Court in Buncombe County, attaching the photographs and the contact information for Attorney Patterson. It was not an accusation. It was a record. A timestamp, a document that said, Here is what exists. Here is when I found it. Here is where I've placed it for safekeeping. Paper doesn't lie. I had been building a paper trail for 6 weeks before I walked into that office. I let the attorney finish his presentation. I asked 2 clarifying questions. When had my grandmother signed, and whether there had been witnesses present? And I wrote down his answers on a notepad I'd brought with me. My brother watched me write. His expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes, the way it does when someone realizes that a situation they thought they controlled has a variable they hadn't accounted for. My mother asked if I had any concerns. I said, "I'd like to take a copy of this document to review before I sign anything." My brother said, very casually, "There's nothing to sign today. This is just the reading." I said, "I know. I'd still like a copy." The attorney printed one and slid it across the table. I took it, folded it carefully, and put it in my bag. Wren was looking at me. I gave her the smallest possible nod. Barely a movement, just enough to say, "Wait." My mother caught me in the parking lot. She was warm again, the practiced warmth, the kind that costs her nothing because she doesn't actually feel it. "I hope this isn't going to be a whole thing," she said. "I don't know what you mean," I said. "Your grandmother was very clear about her wishes at the end," she said. "She wanted the house to stay in the family. She talked to your brother about it." I said, "When was that?" She said, "Over the summer. A few times. He came up to see her." I said, She said, "I just want this to be clean." And that word, clean, the exact same word Nana June had used in that kitchen over that cup of Folgers, landed in the center of my chest like something dropped from a height. "Me too," I said. "I want it to be very clean." I got in my car and drove to Attorney Patterson's office. I won't walk through every step of what came next, because some of it is still a matter of legal record and some of it is simply not mine to narrate in detail. But I will tell you the important parts. Attorney Patterson filed a complaint with the North Carolina State Bar regarding the Weaverville attorney within 10 days of the reading. An investigation was opened. Separately, I submitted the fraudulent will and the original 2019 document to the Question Documents Unit at a state law enforcement office, not the agency I work for, because that would have been a conflict of interest, but a unit I trust and have professional relationships with. The comparison was not complicated. The signature on the fraudulent document showed inconsistencies in pen pressure, letter spacing, and the specific formation of 3 letters that Nana June had written the same way for 60 years. The notarization was a separate problem. The notary's license number attached to the document had been issued in 2022. But the notarization date on the document was listed as August of the same year, which was a Tuesday, and a routine check of the notary's public log showed she had been in Myrtle Beach that week at a conference. The notarization had never happened. The will had been fabricated. My brother called me a week after I'd submitted the complaint. I let it go to voicemail. He called 3 more times. I let those go too. On the 5th call, I picked up because I wanted to hear what he was going to say. He said he could explain. He said things had gotten out of hand. He said that Nana June had told him, verbally, not in writing, that she'd intended to change the will, and that he'd just been trying to honor her wishes, and that the attorney had suggested the best way to handle it was to document what she'd said. I said, "She told you verbally?" He said, "Yes." I said, "In the summer." He said, "Right." I said she was on supplemental oxygen by June. She had 2 hospitalizations in July. You're telling me that in the middle of all of that, she sat down with you and told you she wanted to cut her other grandchildren out of the will, give her house entirely to you, and exclude her only daughter-in-law's daughter from any meaningful inheritance? He was quiet. I said, and then she didn't mention any of this to her attorney of 12 years who was actively managing her estate documents. He said, she didn't trust attorneys. I said, she was friends with her attorney. I've had dinner with them together. He didn't say anything for a moment, and then he said my name, and then he said, "You're going to destroy this family over money." And I said, and I want to be exact here, because I thought about this sentence for a long time, "I'm not destroying anything. I'm just making sure the paper says what the paper was supposed to say." I hung up. My mother did not call me for 2 months. When she finally did, she did not apologize. She said she'd been going through a difficult time. She said she hoped we could eventually move forward. She said family was important. I told her I agreed that family was important. I told her I'd call her when the estate was settled. I did not call her before that. The fraudulent will was formally invalidated by the Buncombe County Superior Court in February. The 2019 will was admitted to probate as the authentic document. The estate proceeded according to Nana June's actual wishes. The house was listed, sold in April for $7,600 in a market that had stayed strong, and the proceeds divided equally. The investment account, which had grown slightly in the intervening months, was divided the same way. The Weaverville attorney surrendered his license as part of a consent agreement with the state bar. He had also, it turned out, done something similar for at least one other client family, which is a thing I try not to think about too much because it makes me very tired and very sad. My brother was not criminally charged, which is the part of this I find hardest to sit with. The investigation concluded that there was insufficient evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he had personally fabricated the document, as opposed to having engaged the attorney knowing what the attorney intended to do. That distinction matters legally. It does not matter to me personally, and I suspect it did not matter to Wren, who received her share of the estate and then moved to Portland and does not attend family gatherings anymore. I don't attend them either. The morning after the sale of the house closed, I drove back to Asheville. Not for any practical reason. Everything had been handled, the closing was done, the proceeds were in escrow awaiting distribution. I drove back because I wanted to see it one more time before it stopped being ours. I parked on the street and sat in the car and looked at the Craftsman porch and the 2 big oak trees in the yard and the window of the bedroom where I used to sleep when I was small. Before everything was what it eventually became. I thought about Nana June at her kitchen table with her yellow legal pad and her Folgers. I want it clean. It was clean. Eventually, in the way that things can be clean after they've been made very dirty first. Not the same as before, but honest, real, accurate. I stayed for about 20 minutes and then I drove home. People ask me sometimes, friends, colleagues, once a woman I sat next to on a flight who somehow got me talking about all of this. They ask if it felt like winning, if it felt satisfying, the way revenge stories are supposed to feel satisfying in the final reel, when the credits are about to roll and the bad people have gotten what they deserved. And I always have to think about how to answer that, because the honest answer is complicated. It felt correct. It felt like the document finally matched reality, the way a good examination should always end. But correctness isn't the same thing as satisfaction, and getting what's right isn't the same thing as getting what you lost. I didn't get my grandmother back. I didn't get the version of my family where this hadn't happened. I didn't get the phone call where my mother said, "I'm sorry, I should have stopped it. I should have been better than this." I got the house sold for what it was worth and split the way it was supposed to be split, and I got to know that the paper said the truth. For right now, for this particular chapter of my life, that has to be enough. It's enough. I've thought a lot about what made the difference in all of this, not the legal mechanics. Those were almost secondary once the right documents were in the right hands. What made the difference was something quieter than that. It was the decision, made weeks before that Saturday morning in a paint-smelling office, to trust what I actually knew instead of what I was being told to accept. That's harder than it sounds. When the people doing the lying are your own family, there's a specific kind of pressure that comes with it, a pressure that has nothing to do with facts and everything to do with belonging. You want to be wrong. You almost need to be wrong, because being right means something you don't want to name yet. It means the version of your family you've been carrying in your head, the one where things are complicated but basically okay, is not the real one. My brother was charming. He was always charming. And charm is a kind of pressure too. It makes you feel like the difficult one for noticing things, like you're being paranoid, like you're the problem in the room. I had spent years absorbing that, years of being the one who asked too many questions, who read things before signing them, who said I need to think about it in a room full of people already nodding yes. What I understand now is that the qualities that made me difficult in that family were exactly the qualities that protected Nana June's actual wishes when it mattered most. The same instinct that made my brother roll his eyes at me over dinner tables for 20 years was the instinct that led me to photograph every document in that filing cabinet, drive those originals to Attorney Patterson's office, and file a time-stamped record with the court before anyone had made a single move. Preparation isn't distrust. That's the thing I want to be clear about. I didn't walk into my grandmother's house after her death looking for a crime. I was doing what I always do, being careful, being precise, making sure the paper matched the reality. The crime found me. The preparation just meant I wasn't caught off guard when it did. And Wren. I think about Wren a lot. She had no protection going in. She trusted that grief was enough of a shared language that no one would take advantage of it. She was wrong about that, and it wasn't her fault. And what happened to her in that conference room was something she didn't deserve and couldn't have seen coming. The fact that she got what was actually hers in the end doesn't undo the fact that someone tried to take it from her while she was still raw from losing her grandmother. That part stays with me. What I believe, from living through this, is that integrity has a kind of structural weight to it. It accumulates. Every time you do the careful thing, the honest thing, the thing that costs you a little social ease, you're building something. You don't always know what you're building it for. Sometimes you're just building it in the dark, for a situation you can't imagine yet, and then the situation arrives. And the thing you built is exactly what you needed. My grandmother wanted it clean. She said that to me at her kitchen table over terrible coffee, and she meant it, and she spent 60 years being the kind of person whose word you could trust. I just tried to be worthy of that.